Gideon and Hara exchanged looks. It didn't sit well with her that her father's contact was Moria. Marvin asked, "Are all the vials there?" Gideon answered, "Every last one." It looked like her father was going to say something, but he just wrinkled his face and shook his head. They left the blazing blunderbuss. Hara was nervous on many levels. Would they be able to fool Moria? Would they be able to convince Moria to leave them alone? This would be their only chance to get free without dirtying their hands first. She looked at Gideon, and he didn't seem worried in the least. She took some strength from that. The warehouse where they had met Moria before was the same one they were using this time. Gideon raised an eyebrow at Hara and she returned it. Her father seemed oblivious. He strolled into the warehouse and called out, "Moria, sweetheart." Hara rolled her eyes. Her father had never cared for anyone but himself. Though he did have a track record of whining and dining many women. Usually for one of his cons, Moria, though, wasn't one to fall for shallow endearments and charms. When she came out of the shadows, she threw her arms around Marvin and he spun her around. Hara sighed. "You two can quit the act. You two are sharks." Moria blinked at her. "I didn't expect you." Hara was tired of the lies. "Yes, you did. You wouldn't have met us if you weren't aware of everything." Moria's eyes sparked. Marvin said, "What is this, my dear? Are you known to my lovely daughter?" Moria stepped back. "Fine, no acts." Yes, I knew you were on your way and you have completely bungled the operation." Marvin opened his mouth probably to profess his innocence, but Moria waved it off. "Quit it, Marvin. You were useful. There is no need to act." Gideon placed the case down. "This is what you want." Moria looked at it, but didn't move towards the case. She turned to Marvin. "Tell me what happened to the doctor." Marvin waved his hands dramatically. "We were attacked by their massive airship and a dragon came out of nowhere and knocked the doctor off the deck. He splattered on the ground below. He was dead instantly. Man, I heard his scream and how it cut off so suddenly. I must say, Moria, I'm truly sorry about that. I really did intend to bring him. But we did bring you the vials. There should be enough there to deal with all the trouble you can find." Moria nodded. "Well, our deal included money for the vials and the doctor, and since you only provided half of the deal, I think I'll let you leave here alive." Marvin went red in his face with his own anger. "What? What about my money?" Hara put her hand on her father's shoulder. "Don't sweat it, Dad. He always wanted to push it." He didn't even notice the gun in Moria's hand. Hara said to Moria, "Now that your business with my father is done, I have something of my own to say. I don't think the pirate life is for me." Then significantly she said, "I'm a bit of a diamond in the rough, but I'm not that rough." Moria shot her a look which could cut. It was clear she got the reference to the diamonds. She clicked the hammer back on the gun, then changed her mind and set it back. Moria's face was stormy. She motioned to someone in the back and a man came to pick up the case. As the man took away the case, Moria said, "Fine, you can have your freedom." Her actions after that were so fast none of them had time to react. Moria pulled the trigger of her gun and spun on her heels and stormed out after the man with a case. Pain flowered in Hara's stomach and her legs became jelly. She stumbled to her knees. Angel came out of her hiding place and trilled entreatingly. Hara heard people moving, but it was only Gideon, who came to her side. He caught her and eased her onto the ground. He looked serious, but not worried. Angel moved from her collar and climbed his arm to sit on his shoulder to peer down at her. Hara asked, "My dad?" "He is gone, sweetheart." Gideon's voice was gentle as he spoke. Hara nodded. only vaguely surprised she wasn't hurt by her father's desertion. Gideon smoothed her hair away from her face. "Do you trust me, my love?" She looked at Gideon and nodded her head. He was here when anyone else would have left her. Gideon said softly, "You are dying. But it doesn't have to be that way. If you are in my collection, you can live." Hara wrinkled her nose and then let out a breath. Fine. He would look after her a lot better than her father. His voice was fading away. He patted her face and she focused. Gideon said firmly, "You need to give me your hands." Hara lifted one, but the other wasn't working so well. She felt his hand touch both her hands and she closed her eyes. His hands tightened on hers and then warmth threaded through her hands. It got hotter though, and soon was uncomfortable. It escalated to fire just under her skin. She squirmed and Gideon's hold on her tightened. He said by her ear, "Almost there, sweetheart, almost." Fire burned through her stomach and she swore she could feel the bullet moving inside her. There was a tinkle of metal on concrete and she opened her eyes. Angel was on the ground and the small metal bullet was in her tiny hands, holding it against her chest. Hara turned her attention though to her own body. There were black tattoos or brands on her arms. There was a significant puddle of blood and she closed her eyes again. The pain was gone, but Gideon was still holding onto her. He shifted her so she was half sitting up. She turned her head against his chest and just lay there for a while. Without opening her eyes, she placed her hand on her stomach. She could feel where the bullet went through her shirt and she felt for the wound underneath. There wasn't even a scar. She opened her eyes when Angel lightly touched her hand with her metal claw. The bullet was nowhere to be seen. Once Hara's eyes were open, Angel clicked her tongue and moved so she was again on her shoulder. There were delicate black tattoos etched into her skin. She could see them on her hand. Hara said, "I take there are a few things about this collection thing which you didn't tell me about." Gideon rumbled a soft, comforting sound and added, "Yeah, your life force is bound to mine. It means you get to live as long as I do." She asked, "How long is that?" He shrugged. We aren't sure. On our own planet we live for a few hundred years, but here we seem to live longer. Especially if we are bound to humans. Our best guess is over 1,000 years. Our emperor who married a human woman 400 years ago is already over 1,000. Gideon rubbed his nose in her hair. "You all right to move?" Hara nodded and he helped her to her feet. She looked around, but there was no sign of her father. She didn't think he would be back at the blazing blunderbuss either. She stopped for a moment and said softly, "Bye, Dad." As they left she asked, "You swapped out all of the poison? You didn't miss one of the vials or anything? Because you are now a bonded dragon and you can be in danger."